Seems odd to say with two faction leaders also being Griffin Lords, but Boris Todbringer Elector Count of Midland, in my opinion, is the best Griffin Lord currently in the game. We'll talk a little bit about why up front here. Blood Roar giving -8 leadership in an AoE combines well with his Crush the Weak. If leadership is lower than 50%, you get a -5/-5 melee attack and defense. Likewise, he's got another AoE debuff, this time just straight up constant with the White Cloak of Ulrich. 10 melee attack, 5% speed. Mostly, though, this is why. The Midland Rune Fang, 8 hit points per second, is the highest level of regeneration, making Boris exceptionally tanky, just for one more constant AoE support, of course, as an Empire Lord has Hold the Line. Here, I'm up against my Patron strat game. I've gone with a little bit of a meme build, but still should be some fun. We've got a big Vanguard force here of some Eshin troops. Death Runners mixed with Triads, Tretch Craventail leading the way along with some Warp Grinders. Got a detachment of Clan Molder with Packmaster and 4 Wolf Rats, mixed Poison and AP. Eshin Sorcerer as a caster, and a whole line of Chaff here. Boris's force, a lot of infantry here for a strat game, which I actually really like. The Flagellants in particular are fantastic right now. Swordsmen and Spearmen to help support them, and some Archers, along with a few Knights of the Blazing Sun to keep the build balanced. A Bright Wizard going to be the caster, so already you can suspect that with that Blood Roar giving negative leadership and the fact that Skaven are base low leadership anyway, with the Fear and Terror here, you're going to be getting a lot of uptime of Crush the Weak on all the Skaven units. Not to mention White Cloak of Ulrich also being on top of that. -15 melee attack is, enough to put, like, even these Skaven slaves completely out of action in terms of their melee attack stats, down to fully 0. So, yeah, pretty brutal stuff. That constant AoE buffs and debuffs plus the regeneration just makes him a tanky Lord. Obviously, Mobile Fear and Terror, kind of high charge power drops, are what the name of the game is for Griffin Lords. And Boris's regeneration and kind of constant support means that micro-wise, he requires less than somebody like a Lewin, which you have to activate his abilities, you have to be careful he doesn't route, so you don't lose his regeneration and physical resistance, even though Lewin is probably on paper, with those things active, better than Boris. Boris just requires a lot less micro, he's a lot more forgiving, which can be very important. Burning Head here is going to do some pretty good damage with my front line. Also overruns a little bit into those Flagellants there, which is fine. But Boris coming in with a big drop here. The Warp Grinders are kind of a win condition unit for me, so them getting terrified immediately and not being able to lock Boris down is huge. My idea here was kind of, if there's a Griffin Lord, we'll lock him down with the Warp Grinders once they come onto the ground, use the Weeping Blade, and then Tretch's Anti-Large to just duel them on the ground. I've also got the debuff from the Eshin Sorcerer, kind of assassination debuff, which actually doesn't have a melee attack component. Tretch is just getting terrified himself anyway, though, and also getting his stats debuffed significantly by Boris, so that's not great. We come in a little late with that snare, and eventually we do get the snare there on Boris. Ix's Triads, Clan Eshin Triads, they do get the Weeping Blade. You can see him down to 42 armor. Brittlebone then popped, now down to 0 melee defense. Tretch comes in, he gets a decent hit there, but also gets punched back in the face pretty hard. Again, those debuffs are definitely affecting Tretch at this point, but nice thing about a flying Griffin Lord is you can just pull away from a disfavorable engagement like that. So he does just that. Again, more friendly fire on the Flagellants, probably not worth it on that Burning Head cast. Meanwhile, if we take an overarching look at the rest of the battlefield, it's fairly chaotic. We've got these Death Runners that have overrun, I kind of flank overloaded that one side. Knights of the Blazing Sun also got cut up on Triads and Doggos. Same thing out here. Knights of the Blazing Sun have routed the Wolf Rats, but then the Packmaster kind of acted as an anchor to keep them pinned in. Like, they're focusing on him, which is the right call, given they have fire damage. He's weak to that, and, he's a fairly valuable target, but that did allow the Wolf Rats to come back from route, and just like this, what's about to happen here, these guys will, come back, collapse on the Knights of Blazing Sun, try and get them out. Boris does drop down, though, for some quick attacks on the Packmaster, gets him routed off, and before the Eshin Triads can get into combat effectively, then the Hounds come in and box things up, but Boris did get a really nice quick hit and run, which is 100%, again, name of the game for Griffin Lords. You want to take advantage of that massive charge bonus and mobility and just constantly be cycling around the battlefield, dropping terror on different pockets. Boris's regeneration and debuffs, again, allow him to do that more effectively than just about any other Lord. We do get him locked down again with the Warp Grinders, but unfortunately nothing's in contact with him, which means he can get back up in the air. An unfortunate situation. I didn't get any damage to him during that uptime, but still holding out some hope that we can just grind down the rest of the units here. Certainly infantry fights going in my favor, and we've just about finished off last of the mobility here. I'm somewhat over chasing, but at the same time just trying to make sure we completely shut down this caster. Has been getting bombarded by warp stars the whole time. It's where I've been spending most of my magic. Yeah, trying to let the Packmaster regenerate as long as possible and not just dive straight into this, because with the Spearmen, with the Flagellants, they're both going to do pretty good DPS to the 40 armor of the Packmaster. I do eventually decide to dive in, and nope, just kidding. That's not, yeah, I waited a little bit too long there to try and save any of these units. The Eshin Sorcerer pops Concealment Bombs, trying to get away, but Boris has him in his sights. He's too close. So, yeah, meanwhile, Burning Head goes off here. Briefly rallied caster. Is it going to be enough to rout the Death Runners and the Triads? Probably not, even with the leadership debuff of the Huntsman shooting there. Let's pop back over here. Check in with Boris as he just continues to abuse my caster here. I do manage to get one more cast of Brittle Bone. And I was thinking, you know, if I could pull this Packmaster up and around, get a little bit of hits here, we might be able to do some damage, go 2v1. Unfortunately, the Sorcerer pretty likely to get terrified here. And not to mention the Packmaster, only 30 melee defense on the Packmaster is really not great. Once that Frenzy wears off, he is not loving life. A little bit of support infantry, takes 2 quick hits from Boris, and he's gone. So that was not good. But still plenty of Clan Eshin units. Maybe I can grind him down in the late game with some Triads if I have enough remaining. If I can maybe keep Tretch alive here. Tretch does have his stock and unspottable ability. Get a little bit of a late game Doppelgang summon there to screen him out, try and get him back from route. But Boris is just such a presence in this late game that I am not sure if I can deal with him. Again, still just a scattering of troops trying to get rid of things and then come back. Honestly, could use their resources all kind of combined up together. Would be helpful for taking things down. A little bit of Warp Stars there. Just doing anything I can to get Boris to his healing cap and try and work through his HP, because I don't really have enough burst to burst him down. This is a mistake, though. I didn't end up actually getting a charge. My Packmaster just kind of sidesteps into this engagement that then gets punched in the face by Boris. And then shatters. So again, that was really bad. It's a few really horrible engagements on my part for the Packmaster, and as a result, he is gone. And that's bad. He was kind of my regenerating terror piece to try and sustain things. Not that there's much that's susceptible to terror. Most of the remaining infantry is unbreakable. But still, I mean, we've got a handful of Spearmen and Swordsmen that we could have terrified. Another Warp Quake there. This is going to do quite a bit of damage. Finish off this unit of Flagellants. Hopefully help finish off this unit of Flagellants. Kind of swing things in favor of my Triad units. Let's get in for some close-ups. Haven't got too many of these just because this battle has been quite wild and diffuse and spread out all over the battlefield. Does be that way sometimes, especially with Skaven. But got some Wolf Rats hanging around. I can't really use them to pin Boris on the ground. They're just going to get immediately terrified. So I just finish off that last unit of Flagellants. And a little bit of Miss Micro here. Should have pulled these guys back away before they routed to those Spearmen. But at the very least, we've got the rest of the Eshin units coming back. Vixtrin's Death Squad included in there. And yeah, 46 melee defense, 41 melee attack. They do actually have the stats to hit Boris in sustained combat. Although they're low enough on leadership that will be obviously debuffed. But still, a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff left for me. A lot of stuff left for the Empire, too, though. If we can get rid of these Spearmen, if we can get rid of the Flagellants, like if it's just Boris by himself left, I'm pretty confident that I can grind through him with my infantry. The Weeping Blade, maybe we go 2v1 with these single entities here, although Tretch is really just having a bad day. He's constantly below 50% leadership. You can see his stats are debuffed. Standard Die, though, is very helpful. Extra leadership and melee defense puts these Eshin Triads up to 52 melee defense. The Flagellants and the Spearmen won't be making much contact with them. The Flagellants a little bit more, but still, Boris comes back down for a charge. With his charge bonus, certainly going to be very good, but again, gets debuffed by the Weeping Blade, so he's got to be careful of that. Just about at his healing cap. But that 8 regeneration means that he certainly can get to it very, very easily. 8 hit points per second is the highest level for a single ability. Volkmar is equivalent. I think Sigvald is also equivalent. Basically, I don't know exactly how it works or if there is any sort of standardization, but my guess is probably all of the epic tier, that is the purple tier abilities, probably are 8 hit points per second. Those are items, obviously, legendary items typically. But, yeah, we do manage to rout off the Spearman here. There's still a handful of Flagellants. Get a couple of actual good hits on Boris there from Tretch. And stay here, I'll get help. Does provide a little bit of extra leadership there. Verminous Valor, I was trying to keep up with Boris. Probably should have popped that a little bit sooner, but he does manage to get back up in the air. Get another cycle charge up and around. Great job by Strat Game here. And this is all fully legal because he has this... Flagellant here fighting, still counting as fulfilling the attacking rule. He can basically cycle charge as much as he wants with Boris until Boris is the last one left, more or less. So, as long as the Flagellants are still fighting, and they are certainly still fighting, getting a nice charge into these Eshin Triads here. That was a really bad engagement for me. The Triads just get mopped quite easily there. And these Flagellants, man, 320 kills. They've almost got an XP. How have they not got an XP chevron yet? That is insane. At 800 damage value and 300 kills. Man, that is quite impressive. But here we go. Got a few more Triads coming back. All it's going to take, though, is a couple of hits on, like, Tretch here to cause a big chain terror route, though. So let's fast forward a little bit as this cycle continues. And there it is. Just like that, ignominious end for Tretch and his sneaky friend, but that's how it goes when you're a Skaven. A great game to Strat Game, honestly. It was right down to the wire there. I thought, honestly, I had a good chance to win up until the end. Definitely made some mistakes, but Tretch there, for what I paid for him, that's pretty close. It's not the worst, although it is certainly not as good as a lot of other Skaven Lords. Just about any other Skaven Lord, I would say, actually. Ashen Sorcerer also pays for himself. Decent. Would have definitely been better off to have summons instead here, just to provide me with more numbers. But again, we use some of these things to have fun, right? Packmaster also decent, helped kind of provide a little bit of an anchor for the Wolf Rat, some of which paid for themselves, some of which did not. Generally, all the Clan Eshin units did very well, though. I find Clan Eshin units trade well into Empire, even Empire infantry, like Triads, as long as they don't get really kind of nasty 1v1 engagements against something like Greatswords, obviously, but even like Flagellants, they can trade quite well. That Weeping Blade is effective, and just generally they do great here. All of them paying some dividends. Skaven Slaves you wouldn't expect to. Spoiler alert, they do not. So, Boris, though, carrying a lot of damage value for the Empire, and also tanking through tons and tons of damage, which is super important. 113 kills despite me limiting Bright Wizard. Still managed to roast out some of my Skaven Slaves, and also some of his own Flagellants. Yeah, Swordsman, Flagellants all get really good value, particularly this one Flagellant. 322 kills, 977 damage value, 15,000 damage dealt. So, I mean, although the damage value isn't that impressive, the amount of total damage dealt is certainly very impressive. And up against the Skaven, you got to clear through that chaff somehow. Yeah, evidently it was this unit of Flagellants that did basically all of it. So that's awesome. Knights of Blazing Sun contributing a little bit as well, but I mean, up against all of this Triads and other things, Wolf Rats, I had plenty of tools to deal with heavy cavalry. In limited numbers, at least, so that's kind of how it worked out there. But anyway, yeah, Boris, back to the man himself. I mean, the fact that he has that 8 regeneration is mostly the thing that sets him apart here. And kind of comparing him to a few of the other legendary lords on Griffins, obviously. I mean, Carl doesn't have his own innate regeneration, which automatically makes him in a way less competitive, although certainly he is much more of a formidable combatant than Boris. In terms of support, I would say he's roughly equivalent. I mean, again, active uptime is a little bit of a micro tax in that you have to activate these at the correct time, and you don't just get a constant benefit without having to use any micro, but it is a more powerful kind of power spike, I guess you could say. And not to mention Carl, 90 charge bonus, almost 500 weapon strength. With Galmarad's active, he can fight most large kind of lords, heroes, monsters, whatever in the game. So It should be said, Carl is a more formidable combatant, but in your standard kit, Boris is cheaper and also comes with his own self-healing, which opens you up to bring other Lords of Magic, because with Carl, you have to bring a Jade Wizard, pretty much, to heal Carl. There's not really a lot of ways around that. King Lewin, on the other hand, does have his own passive regeneration, although it's only 4 hit points per second, and it will shut off if he routes, which is a huge deal. Likewise, 20% physical resistance also. If he routes, this shuts off. So it is a little bit more micro-intensive. Granted, he is tankier than Boris overall. I mean, he's got more total HP, more armor, more melee defense. The physical resistance also helps in that. If he does go below 50% HP, you get a map-wide buff of Beloved Son of Bretonnia, which is quite good, although it's risky to even have him below 50% HP, so many people often cut that. If you have Ham for Fists, maybe take it like me. He does have Blind Shield as well, which again, active uptime ability. You have to remember to use this, but it can make him even that much tankier against missiles and or magic. But way more expensive, like 500 points more expensive than Boris, and again, you have to micro and keep in mind all of those things. Eltharian's an interesting one. It kind of gives you your caster and lord in one, which is good in some ways and bad in others, in that your value is not as distributed. If you lose him, you lose it all, right? He's not that great of a caster. He doesn't have any Winds of Magic regeneration abilities. He's got Lore of High Magic, which is awesome, particularly for a Griffin Lord. You can kind of go for air superiority here with Tempest. But, I mean, he's kind of expensive for what you pay for him. Base costed, if we just compare here, 2250. Oh, no, wait, I've got this item here as well. So 2050 on the Griffin. Whereas, I mean, you're going to be paying less for Boris. Yeah, Boris only 1600 base cost on the Griffin. So Eltharian is way overpriced. You kind of do pay a tax for him, quote unquote, for being a caster and Lord in one. I mean, Lewin, 2,000 points, also pretty expensive with nothing, but at least he comes with this Blessing of the Lady and has more impressive stats in many ways than Eltharian. More HP certainly, although less armor. Similar weapon strength. Eltharian's got slightly higher charge, interestingly enough, but one less melee defense. King Lewin's got better leadership too. Carl, just out of curiosity, let's check his base price as well. 1900, so a little bit cheaper. Comes with Blood Roar, but no physical resistance. He's, again, the most, in terms of actual melee combatant, the most powerful here. But Boris just being so cheap in comparison. I mean, that's one huge point in his favor. And then you've got this top tier regeneration, really good passive abilities, and yeah, I mean, Boris, by far the easiest to use, and as a result, I think the strongest in this particular role. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, though. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.